genetic disorder that leads to muscle deterioration and minimal cognition. 200,000 Americans are at risk for this fatal disease, and doctors have yet to find a cure. DNA mapping has led to the scientific discovery of the specific chromosome that is affected. But will this help or hurt those living with Huntington's disease? Discover the controversy behind the Human Genome Project today on Parenting Kids Living with Genetic Disorders. Hello, my name is Leckie, and today we're visiting the home of the founder of an ever-growing organization, Mean Genes. She founded this organization when she discovered that her son was living with Huntington's disease.
Come in. Thank you for visiting me.
Hello, Mrs. Beckham. I would like to thank you for letting us interview you today.
It's always a pleasure to share my story.
So 4 years ago, you found out your son was living with Huntington's disease. What was that like for you?
It was quite a shock for both my husband and I. Noah was always a little outgoing boy, and all of a sudden, after he turned 16 in April, my husband started seeing that his movements were getting slower and more uncontrollable. He was playing baseball, an MVP by the way, and he just was like socially incapable of going out, being a 16-year-old as they're supposed to be. He would deny his friends' request to go bowling, even he told me that he didn't want to go to school anymore, and that's when I knew something was wrong. So we first took him to our primary care physician, who recommended that we go to a neurologist and get a CT scan because he feared that Noah had Huntington's. So we did, and the results were inevitable. He had Huntington.
So what made you want to found Mean Genes? What was the idea behind it all?
Well, it was, as I said before, it was terrible going through what I had to go through, and without any support. His grandparents were gone, and I had no brothers or sisters to look to. I didn't want anyone else going through that. So it was my idea that we found like an online support group with on-call people that would help other parents going through the same thing I had to go through.
Right. How did your son deal with the news?
Just like my husband and I, it was hard for him. As a 16-year-old, knowing that in 10 to 15 years your life's going to be over, it's hard. And because when death comes, it just comes. But with people with genetic disorders, they know that their time's coming sooner than others. So it was definitely hard for him, but we try to keep a near normal life for him, making him go to school. He's back into baseball, and I can see, regardless of what's going on, he's trying to have a normal life.
What's your stance on DNA mapping?
I'm all for it. If parents can find out that their son or daughter has genetic disorders, then go for it. It's worth the time and money.
What advice would you give to families who have kids who are living with genetic disorders?
At the end of the day, it's all about love and faith, because that's all you have. After you find out, it seems like your life's crumbling and there's no way out, but really you have to cherish the time you have left with the affected by genetic disorders.
Hello, I would like to welcome Dr. Maloney. Unfortunately, she could not be here, so she's utilizing Skype.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It is my pleasure being here to promote awareness to Huntington's disease, as well as to bring attraction to the Mean Genes organization.
So, Dr. Maloney, what is Huntington's disease?
Huntington's disease is a brain disorder that progresses over time. This causes uncontrollable movements, emotional problems, and loss of thinking and interpreting ideas.
And how common is Huntington's disease?
Huntington's disease occurs in 700 out of 100,000 people. It is most common with those who have a European ancestry.
How are genes related to Huntington's disease?
Genes are related to Huntington's disease due to the mutations of the HTT gene. The HTT gene is responsible for making a specific protein, huntingtin. The role of this protein is still unknown, but scientists know that this has to play an important role in the nerve cells in the brain.
What is the mutation?
This mutation occurs with DNA segments, cytosine, adenine, and thymine. Normally, this segment is repeated 10 to 35 times in a normal gene. However, in Huntington patients, this segment usually occurs 36 to more than 120 times.
How do people inherit Huntington's disease?
A person usually inherits Huntington's disease through the genes of one of its affected parents.
Is there any hope for Noah?
Well, Noah can live for another 6 to 16 years because Huntington's patients only live about 10 to 20 years after their diagnosis. So, since he already has lived 4 years with his diagnosis, Noah only has about 6 to 16 good years of life. His signs and symptoms will never go away, but with his dedication of his parents, who seem wonderful, Noah will be able to have a happy, normal life.
Can you further explain genetic disorders for us?
Genes are segments of DNA which call for specific traits. DNA is also known as deoxyribose nucleic acid, and it is made up of nucleotides. A nucleotide consists of phosphate, a sugar, also known as deoxyribose, and one of the 4 bases, adenine, thymine, cytosine, or guanine. A chromosome is DNA and proteins coiled up together. These specific proteins that help coil up the DNA into tiny little microscopic figures, chromosomes, is also known as histones. Histones act as glue balls to hold the DNA tightly wound together. DNA, or deoxyribose nucleic acid, is in the form of a double helix. It is almost impossible to correct hereditary genetic disorders. This is due to that there is such an excessive amount, and once it starts, that protein keeps getting called and called and called and called. And so you can't really correct what is already there. That is why the scientists are trying to figure out different ways to fix and relieve symptoms for patients, those who are also in Noah's case.
Can you give us a quick summary of the Human Genome Project?
The Human Genome Project was the scientific community major plan to figure out all of the genetic code for all human beings. This project additionally has 4 main goals. The first goal was to determine the sequence of the 3 billion base pairs. Next, it was to identify all genes in human DNA. Additionally, it was to learn how to store information in databases and improve tools for data analysis. The Human Genome Project began in October 1990 and lasted until April 2003, 2 years before schedule of its 15-year schedule. It was between the U.S. Department of Energy and National Institution of Health. They did have social, legal, and ethical issues that they needed to work out because not everyone believes in learning genetic disorders and how to prevent them.
Thank you for joining us today on Parenting Kids Living with Genetic Disorders. The HGP needs support from the public. Log on to www.genome.gov for more information on this riveting project. Without genomic studies, we are jeopardizing humanity's quality of life.